consultant is not how you should be seeing yourself. You should be seeing yourself as a leader, right? And go in with that sort of attitude. Allow the company, as I mentioned, to keep you at arm's length. So you need access to all their tools and systems. So if they're using Slack, Microsoft Teams, whatever it might be, make sure you've got access the same as an employee would. If they give you a guest account, fucking quit.
Hi, welcome to SaaS Half Full, the only show serving B2B SaaS marketers. I'm Lindsay Groper. I am EVP of PanBlast. I will be both your host and bartender today. I had an awesome conversation with Andy Culligan, who is a fractional CMO. And Andy's been in a fractional role since before it was cool for the last 4 to 5 years. And we dive into the rise of the fractional CMO, what's driving that migration away from full-time roles, and what types of SaaS companies really will benefit the most from a fractional role versus full-time. He is an Irishman calling in from Austria, and we appreciate him joining us on the show today. If you'd care to, grab a drink and join me as I speak with Andy Culligan. Hey, Andy, welcome to SaaS Half Full.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Andy, you are not based here in the States, so we were not able to ship you a cocktail kit. It is 9 p.m. where you are?
It's not, it's just after 9 p.m.
Just after 9 p.m. You were kind enough, though, to grab a drink and join me today. I'm drinking a very basic girl drink, which is a truly seltzer. I don't know if they even have these. Do they have these across the way?
They don't have Truly, but we've got plenty of seltzers. They've made their way across from the States. It started out in the States, but yeah, we've got plenty of different brands now. But I don't tend to go for them, though.
Right.
It's not my,
Understood.
Not my drink of choice.
What is your drink of choice this evening?
I'm cheating. It's Heineken Zero. So it's,
How is it?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's fine. It's probably the best of the alcohol-free beers. I mean,
okay.
I'm a beer drinker.
Yeah.
And normally alcohol-free beer is shit. And this is not shit. So
right.
It's still not beer, though.
I hear you. The only time I was alcohol-free, obviously, was when I was pregnant. And that was a long time ago. And the alcohol-free beers were horrible. So glad to hear that there's one that's at least good enough for you to drink today. Well, we appreciate it. So Andy and I are going to talk today about the rise of the fractional CMO. We've actually talked about it with a lot of different guests on this show. It just hasn't been the topic of the show. I go to a CMO retreat for all female B2B CMOs every year. I just went, and for the last 3 years, it has been insane how many women that I know, and this holds true for across the board, are sort of jumping ship from full-time CMOs, specifically in the SaaS and tech world, to fractional. And whether they're fractional CMOs themselves or they are running almost like a fractional consultancy, there's been a huge rise in it. So I'm glad that it's a topic you want to talk about as a fractional CMO yourself. But we have on this show, Andy, both marketing leaders. We do have some SaaS founders who may be thinking about does it make sense for me to hire full-time CMO? Does it make sense for fractional? So we'll sort of hit that from both sides of it. But before we dive into that, can you tell us just quickly about your journey? You're obviously a new fractional CMO. That wasn't what you've always been. So talk to us about your journey to get here today, and then what you're doing currently.
So I was always somebody that worked, even from teenage years onwards. I was always doing something, right? So I've done a lot of shitty sales roles is probably the best way to put it. I studied marketing, but I've always sort of been this natural born seller. I studied marketing in Ireland. I'm Irish, obviously, but I'm not based in Ireland. I'm based in Austria. I've been here for 15 years, so just outside of Vienna. And then I ended up working at a multinational for a number of years. I got a job in a multinational, and I then very quickly became the global champion for Marketo back in the early days. So then I understood Marketo and HubSpot, or not HubSpot, sorry, Salesforce, and how both of those tools work together. And then I was the go-to for all things marketing automation, which was super interesting for me because I didn't really have that experience. I just sort of fell into my lap a little bit. Following that, somebody from one of the C-levels from a company called Emarsis, which is now an SAP company. They were an Austrian company and grew into the States, grew all across Europe. Huge clients for example, eBay, for example, they did all their transactional emails, which is huge, right? And then the chief operating officer, Ohad, was looking at my profile on LinkedIn. So I sent him a message, why are you looking at my profile on LinkedIn? And he liked that. And he was like, okay, we're looking for somebody that can run marketing automation for us. There's basically nobody in Austria with your experience. So would you come work for us? And that was basically my start in the tech world, right? Or SaaS even. And I learned a huge amount. And it was, what happened then was they did an entire changeover of the entire marketing team. So they hired an entire team in San Francisco. fired an entire team in San Francisco. And I seen a lot of things change. And I was very close to the C-levels there because of where they were based. They were all based in Austria, and I was here as well. So I just got close to them, and I ended up staying within the team as a lot of people were let go. And I then worked together with the new CMO to build the entire marketing team globally. So I then became like demand gen head, and then did that for a number of years, and then went to a direct competitor, which was, went down like a cup of cold sick, as we would say in Ireland, but there you go. And I built the marketing team up there. That was a company called Exponia, and I was a VP marketing there, grew that over a number of years and grew the team rapidly, and got a lot of experience there again, and huge amount of burn, huge amount of cash to burn. And from there, I went to a company called Leadfeeder, where I was the CMO. That was my first CMO gig, although I had been leading teams and global teams prior to that. It was just the first with that title, let's say. And was seeing a huge amount of growth during the time I was with Leadfeeder, and it was all the way through COVID. So during the COVID years, I was at Leadfeeder. And honestly, like, we were growing so rapidly. Like, we were doing 5% month-on-month growth on our MRR, and keep it like, it was a different model though. It was a volume SaaS model rather than a high ticket SaaS, what I was used to at Exponia and Amarsis. Very interesting, but there's limited things that you can do as a marketer in that space. But we did a lot, and we did a lot of brand work, which was super interesting because everybody was like, oh no, brand's not going to work. But actually we were lowering our customer acquisition costs massively. At the same time, we were growing 5% month on month. It was crazy how we were managing to achieve it. It was almost breaking the SaaS model. But I was doing that for the entirety of COVID and through lockdowns and all that, and a young family and stuff. I was like, I can't do this anymore. It's going to kill me. Life's too short. I'm definitely that's in me to be like, you know what? Like, why am I doing this? There was an exit coming because subsequently they were merged with EchoBot about a year after I left, and I probably would have got a nice payout and everything. But like, again, I'm not the guy to care about money per se. You need to have it, but don't get me wrong, it's not my driver. My driver is to be enjoying what I'm doing and to feel like I'm going somewhere. And I was just wrecked, and I just needed a break. So I decided that I would take the summer off. And then, like, after 2 weeks, people were already reaching out like, hey, do you want full-time work? And I was like, no, but I can give you a hand. And that's how this whole thing started. Like, I started a business by accident. I wasn't planning on doing what I'm doing now. What happened was people just started saying, do you want a full-time job? And I was like, hell no, I'm still taking a break. But let me see what's going on. Let's have a chat. Let's see which way your thing's going. And like, a lot of people just started reaching out. So I was like, okay, shit, there's something in this, And it was only 6 months into what I'm doing now that I first heard the term like fractional CMO. This is September 2021, because I was with a client and I was just helping them with their marketing. That was what I was doing in my head. And then I had a board meeting with their board, which is based in Indianapolis. It's a US-based company. And they introduced me as their fractional CMO. And I was like, oh, never heard that. Yeah, I was like, oh, okay. I'd heard like fractional CFOs and so on. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm a fractional CMO now. So that's sort of when the penny sort of dropped. Now, what I'm seeing now is exactly what you're seeing, is like every second SaaS CMO now is a fractional CMO. Like, everybody's a fractional CMO now. I got in at the start of the wave, I would say, like right at the beginning. It doesn't mean to say that it's any better for me than it is for others, but I managed to get a good book of business going early, and I have clients that I've had now for 3 or 4, almost the entire 3 years that I've been doing it. And yeah, since then the business has been growing rapidly. I've brought on a team, and yeah, like, we're now doing a spin-off of it, which is more focused on placing fractional teams and so on. We can talk about that a bit later, but that's sort of my journey. And I'm sorry for the monologue here. I sort of rambled there, but that should give you a good overview of how I got to where I am. So.
Feels good though to go down memory lane, right? And you're like, God, I've done a lot, and this is where I am today and why. Well, let's talk a little bit about what your belief is in terms of what's driving this migration away from full-time CMO and towards fractional. What's motivating this?
I think it's two. So if we talk about it on the side of the CMO themselves, right? If you look at the turnover in CMOs and SaaS, it's ridiculous, right? It's bad. It's real bad. It's probably the highest turnover in any role. I would imagine CFO is probably either ahead of it or around par, or maybe just behind it. But the problem is that, especially with marketing, everybody thinks that they can be a marketer. And a founder normally is the marketer up until a certain point, and then they need somebody to come in that's going to be able to build them a scalable business, or a scalable marketing department, or a scalable go-to-market function, right? And they typically don't have the patience, the founders. So what I've seen is like they see the sugar rush at the beginning where like you're able to just make some quick changes and stuff starts to click into place very quickly. That's like quick wins, right? But then to go and build like a comprehensive plan and to go implement that plan can take a long time. Like it can take years. It's not going to happen from 1 month to the next. I've been in the position before, especially with VC-backed companies, where VCs are saying to their CEOs from their portfolio companies, like, oh, we need to see massive growth between today and tomorrow, and you've just made this big hire now, so, make it happen like by next week type of thing, And it's just not possible. So it ends up massive friction between CEO and CMO. CMO normally is like, enough of this, or they end up getting shot in the head, right? I don't know. It's this thing. I think people are hiring maybe a little bit too early. The CMO position, perhaps, right? You see that quite often, that they're hiring at a certain point where they really need somebody just to carry a bag and also have a strategic hat, which is really hard to find. So you can find a like 250K a year person that's going to be able to come up with like some shit hot strategy, but that person with the shit hot strategy is not going to want to do any of the execution themselves, and they're not going to want to get into the trenches, right? And I think there's so many variables in this entire thing, but on the CMO side, I think why would I go work for one company when I know after 18 months I'll probably be let go because there might be a disagreement with the founder, or they don't like the direction, or I'm not meeting some crazy target that's been set or whatever. And also look at the track record of the companies as well. It's likely that they've gone through that already. And I could go earn more money somewhere else, like by offering what I do. And then finally, and this was always a thought in my head, it was finally, hey, like if there's one company that I really like, and after a number of years, they're already looking for a full-time CMO, then I might just give that a run. I think options is like the most important thing when I think as a CMO, like, that your options are limited if you're stuck with one company. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing, right? Then on the company side, I think like on the employer side, they just, again, they need somebody to come in and carry a bag. And I think the thing with the fractional CMOs things, the ones that I've spoken to, and I speak for myself as well, is we make sure that stuff gets executed. We won't be doing the execution necessarily because we just don't have the time, but we'll make sure whoever on the team is really getting a kick up the ass to make sure that they're doing the execution, right? And because if they're not doing the execution, that you're out of a client. That's the thing. So I think that, plus the fact that it's people coming with a lot of experience for not too much, not too big of a price. Like the price is cheaper than what a full-time CMO will cost. Plus they can come in and start overnight, like you can have them in the morning in comparison to going out to market for a full-time CMO, which you need to take into account recruiter costs and time, etc. Right?
Yeah, it seems like you're saying there's less risk on both sides going the fractional route.
100%. And as well as that, on the risk point, you make a good point there, in that if you're an employer, you can let go of fractional CMO in the morning. It's just like letting go an agency, basically, right?
Sure. No, absolutely. Or what have you seen are some of the misconceptions maybe that CEOs or founders have about fractional CMOs?
I've had a couple of prospect calls where they're like, they see it more like a maternity leave cover type of thing, where it's like, oh yeah, you just come in and work full time for a little bit of time. And I'm like, no, that's not how it's going to work, Like I always try to communicate, like, stop focusing on the fucking hours, like the hours are not important here. It's the outcomes that you need to be focused on. Like it's because people are so focused. How many hours are you going to do? And I was like, do you care? Like as long as
you get the work done. Yeah.
And then like, no, I don't, but tell me the hours need to be built into the contract because I don't want you to be taking the piss, I'm like, right. I won't, but okay.
Right. So, my full-time job is running a PR agency, and we are an agency that does not bill our clients by the hour. And I still get that question. And does it matter? We're going to take it on the chin. It all evens out, right? But it's like, we're going to do what we have to do to get the work done. And some months we're going to be completely upside down because of some issue. Yeah, I find that interesting, that question as well. Those who are thinking about becoming a fractional CMO, then how do you organize your time? Because it is spend the hours it takes to get the job done and the outcomes that you've aligned on, right, with the companies that you're working with. So, but how do you balance your time accordingly to know how much work you can take on not overextend yourself, or now you're working more than a full-time job, which was what you were trying to get out of.
I was trying to avoid. Now, if you speak to my wife, she tells me that I work too much. I got myself a Miranda. So I have an EA called Miranda who is amazing, and she makes sure that my calendar is fully organized, and she makes sure that I'm not overextending myself when it comes to time. And I'm really bad at this, but she does all my calendar management. And the reason I say I'm really bad at it, because I just end up throwing stuff in there. And then she's like, what are you doing? Because it ends up very quickly that I don't have a pee break for like 6 hours type of thing, you know? Like I looked at my calendar today, she put in 30 minutes for tomorrow, just capital letters, eat, full stop. I looked at that this morning and I was like, what is that? But it turns out it was Miranda telling me that I had to eat. So yeah, so for anybody that's doing it, it was really a game changer for me, because it enabled me actually to save probably 10 hours a week from calendar management, email management. And that 10 hours she just manages for me, and that's another client. You know, that's another piece of business that I can win, right?
Absolutely. So, and Miranda is a human, not a bot.
No bots. No
bot. Miranda's human.
Miranda's human. I did some work for a company called basehq.com. They did a executive assistant software, and then they ended up merging together with another company that did EA placement services. They're based out of the States. I just said I'd try it, and Miranda's been working with me now for 2 years, and she comes from Base. She's based in Florida. So it's interesting with the time zone differences, but it's fine. Like I'm used to working with companies on the East Coast anyway, so it works out very well. She comes in the morning and there's just a to-do list of all the calendar entries and stuff that need to be made, and email and whatever. But without her, it wouldn't work.
Yeah, it sounds like it. You've been doing this fractional thing for a while now. Are there some qualities or characteristics that you see in companies that have, I guess, best position to work with a fractional CMO versus full-time? So when you're looking at the types of companies, size, scale, growth phase, industry, et cetera, there are certain ones where you say, yeah, you would benefit the most from fractional.
There's a certain size, right? I think the perfect size is anywhere between 10 to 20 million, maybe or 10 to 30 million is probably best, right? Because I think that covers a wide boundary, right? I think when you go past the 30 million, you normally, or you should, have a well-developed marketing engine team in place, right? If you've managed to get to 30 million, you probably have a good go-to-market motion, right? You'd be surprised though. Like I've seen things of all shapes and sizes, right? But
so have I.
I've seen some real horror stories, you know. But yeah, like I think between that 10 to 30 million ARR is where it normally works best. The founder is still normally the CEO, right? So it's still sort of founder led, let's say. And with that, you normally have you do have a marketing team in place, because it's not going to work if you don't have a marketing team in place. If you don't have a marketing team in place at all, it's because you're too early stage, most likely. But at the same time, as I mentioned before, like you need people there that are going to be able to do most of the heavy lifting. Like they need to be told what to do. So typically with those founder led companies, you're going to have somebody that would have been quite junior, that would be just being brought through the process from maybe early on with the company, and they just so happened to grow with the company, and then they don't really know which way to go now, right? Which you see quite often. So yeah, like in terms of like the actual industry themselves, like it's agnostic, I would say. Like I work with companies across all. Like probably my favorite is MarTech and sales tech. That's probably where I'm a marketer and I've been a seller, and I run SDR teams as well. So it's that MarTech and sales tech is interesting to me, and I know my audience very well there, right? Because I am or was the audience for it. But yeah, like I'd say 10 to 30 million, industry agnostic, as long as it's in SaaS.
You mentioned a couple of times coming in and telling marketing teams what to do. What's some advice that you have for maybe new fractional CMOs, or even if you're a founder hiring one, on how to integrate with the team, the existing team, or strategies that work well, others that don't? Any advice that you have there?
First and foremost, don't like keep them away at arm's length. Like I hate this, like, oh, this is our agency, and treat them like that. Like I hate that. Like there's two words that like I hate. It's like agency and consultant, like that dirty C word, like consultant, I hate. You know, it's like because consultants are like these Deloitte people that come in and tell you what to do and then go away and don't give you a hand with it and just give you like consultant like is not how you should be seeing yourself. You should be seeing yourself as a leader, right? And go in with that sort of attitude. Allow the company, as I mentioned, to keep you at arm's length. So you need access to all their tools and systems. So if they're using Slack, Microsoft Teams, whatever it might be, make sure you've got access the same as an employee would. If they give you a guest account, fucking quit on Slack, because like a guest account on Slack is a pain in the arse. You need to be introduced to people to talk to them, whatever. Just like act as a normal employee. That's how I've managed to keep the business that I've been working with for 3 years, because they see me as an employee. They bring me to their sales kickoffs as an employee. I get along with the sales and marketing teams the same as an employee would. I make sure that the teams are being looked after the same as a full-time employee would. So like ingrain yourself in that organization, and that will then cause longevity for you.
So you mentioned you've been with the same company for 3 years. What aren't they getting from you as a fractional CMO with a 3-year commitment that they would be getting from full-time? Is it really bandwidth?
I don't really know, to be honest with you. Like we're managing to get the results that are set to the team the entire time, right? It's like we're hitting targets every quarter. I don't know. Like I'm thinking of one company in particular, there's 2 companies that fall into that like thing of working with for 3 years. And if you spoke with their founders or their CEOs or the people that I work directly with, one is a chief revenue officer and one is a CEO, they would both tell you that I'm always available when they need me to be available, right? I make sure that the team is being looked after. If the team need a shoulder to cry on, I'm there to cry on. I make sure that they have a plan that's being executed on. I make sure that the KPIs are in place and everybody knows the KPIs and it's communicated effectively. There might be sometimes like when it gets very busy that I'm not able to do as much. Like let's say, for example, a landing page needs to be done and everybody's like flat out. I would normally, if I'm full-time, like I'll just write it. And I just can't if I've got too many other things, or at least in a timely enough manner to get it across to them. But really, they're not missing out on a huge amount that they would be with a full-time CMO.
Yeah. I mean, I keep going back to the time. You would have to have, I imagine, very strong boundaries of your time, right? And expectations around that, because if that's not your only client, I feel like it would be very hard for that not to turn in to a full-time and dedicate full-time hours across the board to just, again, to make sure that there's clear expectations and boundaries about what you are able and not able to do.
If you're on their networks, right? So if you're on Slack, etc., you can very quickly write back to something. You know, I think if you think of it almost like a triage, right? Think of it like there's a triage there that you're able to get back to immediate things, because that's normally how it is. Like people need information, so you're able to give them information quick, and they're able to go execute. If you're able to do that multitasking, then you'll work well. Like that works well for me. I'm able to deal with 3 different clients all at the same time. I'll be on the phone to one like this, and at the same time there might be like a couple of minutes in between where somebody else is talking where I don't need to pay too much attention. I'm getting back to that Slack message that's required for how do we do this or that. Okay, get that sent. In the meantime, there might be also an email that needs to go out to another client. Like it happens like that, and that can be a little bit like, oh dear Lord. But for me, actually, it works. You know, I know that's not for everyone, and I know for a lot of people that might be like, oh God, that sounds horrible. But for me, it's actually something I enjoy. Like I like to have lots of different things going on at the same time, and I'm able to juggle it really well. But I know that's not everybody. So to go to your point, if you are somebody that needs things to be very structured, I think you're going to struggle to have multiple books of business.
I would imagine so too. If you like to be, between these hours of the day, I'm exclusively going to do this, hard stop. And then, right, which I don't think is the nature of any CMO role anyway, that I know of at least. Do you picture yourself continuing to live in this fractional CMO world, or what's next for you? So
I mentioned at the start of this call that I've just launched another business with some partners, and I'm the CEO of that business. It's called Purple Pickle, purplepickle.io. People say, oh, why is it called Purple Pickle? It's a silly name. Yes, it is a silly name, but it's the name that we chose. We did a naming exercise, and that's just what came out of it. There's no meaning whatsoever. You are saying Purple Pickle. Purple Pickle. Purple Pickle. Purple Pickle. Okay. Yeah. Purplepickle.io. And basically what it is, it's a go-to-market team that will help you basically fix your go-to-market strategy, right? So we have content specialists, marketing operations specialists, digital marketing specialists, product marketing, brand, design, the list goes on, right? So we have people that are experts in their field, and they're all fractional people. So if you need people executing stuff, we've got people to execute. If you need people to come in and lead teams and any one of the marketing disciplines, we have people that lead teams. If you need somebody to come in and help you build a marketing plan, that's what I would come in and do. And as well on the execution front, or if you need somebody ongoing coaching, whatever, I would also do that. But it's basically a spin-off of what I'm doing now, that it's not just me, but it's more people and more resource. And yeah, that's basically what I'm doing now. However, my long-term goal for me would be to launch tech at some point. Like SaaS tech is my passion, right? So at some point I want to be able to either found something or at least step into something that's maybe a little bit bigger, that's on the growth journey, let's say at that sort of 5 to 10 million space, and step into a CEO role. So this company that I'm now opening now is I'll be in the CEO role there, and I've now run my own business successfully for the past 3.5 years. So I see like the natural progression for me would be to maybe move away from the CMO piece and go into more CEO world.
Good. I love that for you. Purple Pickle. You heard it here first, folks. I love the name. Well, Andy, this has been awesome. I really appreciate the conversation. As we end every show, I ask my guests if they have a signature or favorite toast to send us out.
Signature, so I'm Irish, so I'd say sláinte.
Sláinte?
Sláinte just means, have you heard that one before?
We have not. I've had a lot of cheers for many different languages, many different nationalities, and not ever that. So thank you.
Cheers. Sláinte.
Sláinte. Thanks again to Andy for joining me on SaaS Half Full. I enjoyed that conversation. And after I hit stop record, we realized we had so many connections in Indianapolis, which is so crazy. So from Austria to Indianapolis, we literally had like 1 degree of separation, which made this conversation even more fun. Hopefully you took a couple things away. We always appreciate the listen. And until next time, bottoms up.